thinking of all of you today across Texas. I know the rise in case numbers is causing fear and apprehension. People are frightened, and they're especially worried about their parents, their grandparents, their loved ones who are most at risk. This virus is tough, but Texas is tougher. We can stop the spread, but it's up to all of us to do it. We have to step up and do both the simple things and the hard things to keep our families and our neighbors safe. Wear a mask, wash your hands, stay home if you can, and socially distance when you go out. I want every single American to know, if you're sick, if you're struggling, if you're worried about how you're going to get through the day, I will not abandon you. We're all in this together. We'll fight this together. And together, we'll emerge from this stronger than we were before we began. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Texas is the biggest battleground state.
And in 2020,
we have the opportunity
to turn our state blue
up and down the ballot.
We have the opportunity to expand access to affordable health care, finance our public schools, strengthen our economy, and take meaningful action on gun violence. There's so much more in the United States Senate.
We have the opportunity to pave the way towards a more sustainable future at the Texas Railroad Commission.
We have the opportunity
to elect judges
and the justices
who will restore fairness, equality,
and balance in our courts.
We have the opportunity
to shape the political future of Texas
and repair the broken systems
that disenfranchise working families in our great state.
We have the opportunity to ensure that Texans in positions of power
embrace empathy,
open minds,
and swing open the doors of possibility.
By working together
and uniting behind our shared vision of a more inclusive world,
we will win back our state.
We will win because we have to.
We have to put an end to the hate, the lack of access, and the suffering.
We have to deliver on the fair shot that every Texan deserves.
Our cause,
our movement,
is about the restoration of justice and the expansion of opportunity.
None of this can be accomplished unless we work together.
In order to bring lasting change to Texas,
we must work alongside every down ballot candidate, every activist, and every Texas Democrat
to continue building the largest democratic movement our state has ever seen.
We're asking you to be a part of this historic fight.
Together, we will create a Texas that we can all believe and thrive in.
Together, we will save Texas and in turn, save the entire country.
Join us.
Join us.
When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers. My son was in Iraq. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. You're the worst president America has ever had. Come on, vote, vote. He cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Texas is the biggest battleground state in the country, and right now it is all hands on deck to turn out every single voter and to make sure that Texas fulfills its promise and goes blue. Tonight is the last presidential debate between our amazing presidential nominee, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. Joining us today are three of the best Texas Democrats that we have. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke, former Secretary of Urban and Housing Development Julián Castro, and Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo. They're going to speak about what they were looking for at the debate, what they see in Texas, and what it's going to take to turn Texas blue. And with that being said, the way this is going to work is after they speak, reporters on this call can ask questions by typing into the question box. We'll get to those questions on a first come, first served basis. So type them in there. We will get to them and we will make that as informative as possible. With that being said, I will pass this over to the first speaker, former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Beto?
Thanks, Avi, and thanks to all the reporters who are on the call with us today. When it comes to the Biden debate tonight, I'm very much looking forward to watching it. I'm very confident that Vice President Biden is going to again do a great job, make us proud, demonstrate the contrast between what he wants to do for this country in effectively confronting this pandemic, in getting millions of Americans back to work, and the absolute failure in leadership demonstrated by Donald Trump and his administration. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. When it comes to Texas, I'd like to share this with you. I think the story so far of 2020 is the Texas voter. In the most diverse swing state of any of them, in the most voter suppressed state of all 50, Texas voters have turned out in record numbers. On the eve of the 2018 midterm election, Texas ranked dead last, 50th in voter turnout. Thus far in the 2020 election, we rank number one in votes cast and number one in votes cast relative to our 2016 performance. In other words, Texas voters are overcoming voter ID, polling place closures, the racial gerrymander, Greg Abbott removing the satellite absentee ballot drop-off locations, and all the other shenanigans of a frightened Republican leadership that understands that their last grasp on power will be defeated by the voters and by the amazing slate of Democratic voters that we have up and down the ballot, especially, I think, running for state house, where we are only 9 seats down from claiming a majority for the first time in 20 years. A majority, by the way, which will be seated in time for the 2021 redistricting and can begin to dismantle that infrastructure of voter suppression that has really held our state back. I would argue that we've never really been a red state. We've been a non-voting state. And a non-voting state, not for any lack of love of democracy, but because we were drawn that way and kept down that way by the Republican majority that is not afraid of voter fraud, but is instead afraid of voters. The last thing that I want to leave you with before I turn this over to the others on this call is that in addition to the courage and the perseverance of the Texas voter, you have extraordinary Democratic leaders in our state. I've never seen the Texas Democratic Party this well funded, this well organized, and this effective in my life. I've never seen grassroots organizations like the Texas Organizing Project reaching as many low propensity Black and brown voters as they have done over the last 10 years and are certainly focused on doing this year. I've never seen a state team led by Rebecca Acuna, who is Joe Biden's state director in Texas, do more with less than the one that this team is doing right now. And I've never seen leaders like Julián Castro, who after being mayor of San Antonio, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, a presidential candidate, got right back into it in Texas, supporting Democratic candidates up and down the ballot and enlarging the electorate by helping to register, contact, and turn out voters. And then lastly, Lina Hidalgo, Judge Lina Hidalgo, who represents and serves more constituents in Harris County, almost 5 million people, than are in the entire state of Nevada, who is more effectively than the governor of Texas fighting COVID-19, who is more effective than almost any leader in the country right now, improving access to the ballot box, who's invested in the infrastructure of democracy, has helped to make the amazing turnout we saw in Harris County so far possible. Folks, on the first day of early voting, 128,000 people voted in Harris County, which was double the record of the previous early voting turnout in previous cycles, and more than all the ballots cast in the state of Georgia on their first day of early voting. That has a lot to do with the voters there, with Chris Hollins, the county clerk, and a lot to do with the leadership of Judge Hidalgo. So this is the contrast that I want you all to take note of. When you see Governor Abbott flailing and failing with more than 17,000 Texans dead, with record unemployment, with him trying to shut down our democracy, the response to that is someone like Lina Hidalgo, who is a success on every one of those fronts. So thank you all for joining the call. Abhi, thank you for asking me to be a part of it. Looking forward to what everyone else has to say.
Great. Thank you very much, Beto. That was great. We're going to pass this over now to Secretary Castro.
Thank you, Abhi, and thanks to everybody at the Texas Democratic Party for the tremendous work that I know y'all are doing with only 12 days left that y'all have been doing for so long. It's very much appreciated. I, of course, want to thank former Congressman O'Rourke for the excellent work that he, empowered by people, have been doing to reach out to Texas voters across the state, get volunteers organized to make sure that everybody knows that it's time to go vote. And they've been doing a fantastic job. I also want to commend County Judge Hidalgo for a stellar job, not only in improving access to the ballot box, but in every other way, in dealing with COVID, in helping Harris County to get through this and recover, help get people back to work. She truly has been excellent in her role there as Harris County Judge. So as of yesterday, my understanding is that 5,874,624 people have voted in Texas. 684 people have voted in Texas, which represents 65.5% of the number of people that voted in 2016. Here in Texas, what you're watching in our state is the metamorphosis of this state. You're watching the voters of this state make a big statement about the future of this state and of this country. The voters of Texas are saying that they want new leadership in the United States Senate and in the Oval Office. They want a leader like Joe Biden who is going to have the experience, the wisdom, the character to get us through this pandemic, to get people back to work, get our economy back up and going, ensuring that we can tackle the biggest challenges of our time, like climate change, and reach for the nation's highest ideals, get us closer to full equality in this country. What we also see out there is, unfortunately, that as Republicans have become more and more desperate, their naked attempts, raw attempts to block access to the ballot box have gotten more and more ludicrous. They've done it for years, as Beto said, through gerrymandering, through voter ID, in any number of ways. But this year, it has reached a fever pitch. They are so desperate, they will do anything that it takes to keep more people from voting. And it's a shame, because as Democrats, we believe that the more people participate in our democracy, the better. And I want to commend County Judge Hidalgo for making it as convenient as possible for people to safely vote in Harris County. They have set up a model of how counties should pursue this in years to come. Just two more things. We have an opportunity to make history in Texas. We have an opportunity to remake the electoral map. What I see emerging after this election is a new electoral map with the 78 electoral votes of Arizona, Texas, and Florida right at the center of it, and Texas having 38 of those electoral votes. What it'll mean is that the concerns of Texans, whether they be with infrastructure or the economy or equality or anything else, are going to be right at the forefront of Washington's concerns, because they have to be, and that we're going to have, I think, a more effective voice, a louder voice. It's also going to mean for the Hispanic community, because of this new electoral map, that it also will have a stronger voice, and I believe a stronger responsibility to turn out. And I want to challenge the Hispanic community of Texas to get out there and to vote. If you live in my hometown of San Antonio, if you live in the Rio Grande Valley, if you're out there in North Texas, wherever you're at, the Hispanic community has so much at stake in this election that we cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. Too many people are out of work. Too many small businesses are closed down. Too many immigrant families have been terrorized by the Trump administration. We have to get off the sidelines, and we have to go vote now. And lastly, my hope is that we will see from the DNC and from the Biden campaign investment in Texas in these last 12 days, because this is it. It's crunch time. It's now or never. And I was pleased to see that the Biden campaign has a $180 million cash advantage at this point, and I'm sure that that's only growing stronger. Now, there are big priorities, like making sure that Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are locked down. And I believe that the Biden campaign is doing a fantastic job of locking those states down, and they need to. But to have Texas at 48-47, 48-48, that's just too much to ignore. The resources and investment ought to be made in this state because, as Beto has pointed out, as others have pointed out, to win Texas is not just to win an election. It's to win on the issues that matter to our country. It's to send a strong message that Donald Trump can't deny. And it will remake the electoral map for generations to the benefit of Democrats everywhere.
Thank you very much, Secretary Castro. That was great. We're now going to pass this over to Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo. Judge?
Thank you, Abby, and it's good to be with everybody. And Congressman O'Rourke and Secretary Castro, you guys are too kind. I appreciate your guys' work activating and mobilizing and elevating the voices of voters, not just now, but always, as you have done over the years. So thank you all so much for your work and the work you continue to do. For our part here in Harris County, with the support of my colleagues on Commissioner's Court, we've made historic investments in voting access, in making voting safe, secure, convenient, expanded voting hours, expanded number of locations, and that combined with voters' energy for Joe Biden, with voters' energy for change, has been a perfect storm. And we're seeing incredible numbers. We keep breaking records. Yesterday, we crossed the number of early votes from 2018. Today, I just got word as of 2:45, we've had 900,000 votes cast in Harris County. We still have a week and a half left of early vote and election day. And so it's beautiful, it's electric, and I'm so excited to see this participation. Notably, it's happening in the face of voter suppression. We have seen the attempts from the Republican Party, the state leadership, to suppress the vote, and voters are undaunted. They're undaunted here in Harris County. They're undaunted in Texas. I hear from my constituents that they're participating because they believe in these issues, because they want to make their voice heard, but also because they want to fight against the suppression that they see is coming from the state and from the Republican Party. When I was elected, a lot of people were surprised in 2018, and I wasn't, because I knew Texas is changing. I knew and I know that the change is coming faster than people expected it to. And these changes are not just demographic. These are changes based on ideas because voters are seeing what democratic leadership looks like, what democratic results look like on environment, on a responsible response to the pandemic, on voting access, on respecting the right to vote. Voters are participating and voting for those policies. They're voting for Joe Biden, and I trust that that's going to continue happening. So I continue to encourage everyone in the state to make their voices heard. It's our time. The country's watching, and I'm so eager to see this participation continue.
Thank you very much, Judge Hidalgo. We're now going to go to a question and answer section. To ask a question, type it into the question box right now, and we will get to them on a first come, first served basis. First question is from Veronica Calderon of Univision. She says, it is quite remarkable that the three Democratic leaders here are either Hispanic or speak both English and Spanish. There has been enthusiasm for months now in Texas, but now the national news is catching up. In a state where 1 out of 3 eligible voters are Hispanic, what would you say is the message Texas Democrats are sending to the country? Judge Hidalgo, do you want to take that first?
Yes, and I'm happy to repeat in Spanish if it's useful. Let me know, Abby, and from
can you do it in English and Spanish?
So what I'm hearing from the Hispanic community is that fight, that recognition that we've been facing attacks from the federal government, not just rhetorical attacks, but attacks that have resulted in real life, painful impacts to our community, like the shooting we saw in El Paso, like the policies that are coming out of the state and the federal government. And so the community, I think, is having a moment of participation, like what California saw in the 90s. Folks are seeing it's time to go out there and vote, to defend DACA, to defend the Affordable Care Act, and to defend also our values, our worth as members of this community, of this country. So, when I talk to the Hispanic community, what I hear from people is, bring it on. Bring it on. This is what folks are finding energizing, is those attempts at suppression and those attempts at attacks. So to repeat in Spanish very briefly, he estado observando la comunidad latina en el estado y lo que veo es un espíritu luchador totalmente. Están viendo los ataques por parte del gobierno estatal, por parte del gobierno federal, y es una situación como lo que se vio en California en los años 90. Los latinos están reconociendo que no van a aceptar este tipo de ataques, que van a participar para proteger DACA, para proteger la salud, el acceso a la salud y para proteger sus valores, su participación como miembros de esta comunidad. Entonces veo esa energía de decir no nos vamos a dejar oprimir, vamos a participar y vamos a votar.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to the next question, which is from Jeremy Wallace of the Houston Chronicle. He said, Dan Patrick told a national television audience this week that almost everyone in office, particularly on the Democratic side, knows that there is fraud in mail-in ballots. Can y'all address this? Is there something in mail-in balloting in Texas that makes it open for abuse? Do either Congressman O'Rourke or Secretary Castro want to take this one?
I'm happy to start, and
Yeah,
I'll say,
go ahead.
Jeremy, I really, with all maximum respect, I think that's your job. If you repeat these kind of falsehoods from Dan Patrick, you are part of the problem, because you know as well as I do that the incidence of voter fraud by mail is incredibly small. I think you have a better chance of being struck by lightning than of seeing voter fraud in your lifetime in Texas or really any other state in this country. So, you all have a responsibility to debunk these myths and not do the Republican says and the Democrat responds. So I'd urge you to do that because, the Washington Post reported on Friday that Texas has become the worst state for voter access. It's harder to vote in Texas than it is in any other. And yet you have these voters, thanks to Lina Hidalgo and other great leaders who've made made it easier to vote in their specific districts or counties. You have these voters overcoming this suppression. That, I think, is the story. So one other thing that I want to touch on that the secretary brought up. Look, you have the most diverse swing state. You have Black voters, Latino voters voting in record numbers against, in the face of, as the judge said, historic levels of voter suppression. They should be commended for that, but they should also be helped. And I'm looking for the Biden-Harris campaign to invest more in Texas. Look, the voters in Texas are doing their part. And given the cash on hand advantage that they have right now, I would argue they have a responsibility in making sure that we continue to help these voters in the face of lawsuits from our attorney general, further voter suppression tactics from our governor, and who knows what's next that they are going to throw at us. We need some help from the national ticket. And then there's this. The secretary also pointed out the Quinnipiac poll yesterday, Biden 47%, Trump 47%. The Morning Consult poll today, Biden 48%, Trump 47%. This state is theirs to lose. They have invested close to $0 in the state of Texas, and they're doing this well already. Imagine if they invested some real dollars in helping those voters who are up against the most historic levels of voter suppression actually cast their ballots. And last point, unlike Pennsylvania, which will take days or weeks to count the ballots after election night, we may not know the winner there for quite some time. Texas, which begins counting the absentee ballots on October 30th, Texas, which did not expand absentee voting in our state, Texas will know the results on the night of November 3rd. And if our 38 electoral college votes come in for Biden, it is game over mathematically for Trump. The national nightmare will have ended, and it will be thanks to the Texas voters. So we really hope that the Biden-Harris team see this opportunity and also, frankly, see this responsibility.
Thank you very much, Beto. Secretary Castro, do you want to take that as well?
Yeah, I mean, why do we, let me just take the first part of that, the question from Jeremy, because I obviously agree with Beto on this last point about investment, that what the Republicans are selling is propaganda. The level of voter fraud out there is extremely low. And so what we need to focus on in Texas is encouraging people to get out and vote, whether that's in person or by mail, and making it more convenient. And these shameless attacks by Republicans on the ability of everyday citizens to go vote is driven by their absolute panic about losing their grip of power, their grip on control of power in this state. That's all that it's about. There's no truth to their claims. It's all about trying to keep their power.
Thank you, Secretary. Next question is from the CNN news desk. They say 2 out of the last 3 polls show Joe Biden ahead in the state of Texas. What counties and what particular areas are you guys looking for that's going to put Joe Biden over the top in Texas?
Do you mind if I...
Congressman, do you want to take that? Yeah.
So we have focused, as we should, on Harris County as the largest county in Texas, with among the best leadership of any county in any country, in any state, thanks to Judge Hidalgo and the great work of other grassroots organizers there, like the Texas Organizing Project. But I want to direct your attention also to North Texas. You look at the turnout in Denton County, in Collin County, which used to be so red you could see them glowing from outer space. We are winning state house seats in those counties for the first time in generations. In some cases, we have Democrats contending on the November ballot for the first time in years, in election cycles. And we're seeing turnout levels there that rival and sometimes surpass the amazing turnout that we've seen in Harris County. But we need to make sure that we're also turning out Democrats. And it's just critically important, given all the attempts made by Abbott and Paxton and others to keep voters at home, that we all realize that if they're trying this hard to keep us from voting, then our votes must be really valuable and very critical in deciding these elections. And it is primarily in Harris and the surrounding counties, and in Dallas, Tarrant, Denton, Collin, and the surrounding counties that we have the most competitive state house races. And those of you on this call know that because of the population growth that will be reflected in the 2020 census, we will draw in at least 3 new congressional districts in the 2021 redistricting year. If Democrats have a majority and finally have a seat at that table, we can begin to draw people in who've literally been drawn out by the Republican majority. And this democracy here in Texas can really work. And we will have the ability to have a truly competitive state on the state house, congressional, U.S. Senate, and presidential level for the foreseeable future. So we love Harris. We love El Paso, where I am, which is up at least 26, 27% over its previous high water mark. A lot of other bright spots, but let's get North Texas out and let's win some of these state house races in that part of Texas.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Congressman. Does anyone else want to take that?
Let me just take the flip side. Oh, go ahead, Lina.
Well, I just have to add, the suburbs, right? More broadly, what we saw here in Harris County in 18, it wasn't just Harris County, it was Fort Bend County also that saw fantastic changes. DA, sheriff, these at-large positions that had not been selected before, DA and the county judge were the ones that won there that were up. And so whether it is Fort Bend, whether it's Denton, whether it's Tarrant, we look at these areas that are turning Democratic, not just because of the demographic shifts, also because of the ideological recognition of what's happening, of the policies that work. And then more broadly statewide, it's the turnout, is that energy. And it's undeniable. I mean, the fact that you're seeing this kind of turnout statewide tells you that the folks who were there, whose minds didn't need to be changed, they needed to come out and vote. It's that ease of access and that moment of saying, you know what, I've had it with the suppression, I'm going to participate. So I would focus on those areas.
Great. And Secretary?
Just quickly, on the other side of this, I want to ask and challenge Bexar County and the Rio Grande Valley to turn out. What we've seen in Harris County and a couple of the other counties in Texas is tremendous. And here in Bexar County, we're ahead of 2016 overall, but we haven't seen quite the numbers that these other counties have. And so I want to ask people in Bexar County and people in the Rio Grande Valley to come out and vote now, vote early, make your voice heard, because the stakes have never been higher.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Great points as well. Next question is from Teresa Woodward at WFAA, and it's for both Congressman O'Rourke and Secretary Castro. It's if you could give Joe Biden one piece of advice about his performance tonight, what would it be? Congressman, do you want to start?
Tell us that you're coming to Texas. I think that would electrify this state. This state, again, that is performing so well, thanks to the leadership that you're seeing on this call. Thanks to all the voters who are overcoming these barriers to access to the ballot box. Thanks to the great slate of candidates, from county commissioner to state house to U.S. Congress to U.S. Senate to railroad commissioner to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. And I think his commitment to the most diverse electorate of any swing state in the country would be powerful, not just in Texas, but would be powerful across this country.
Thank you. And Congressman, and Secretary?
Yeah, my advice to Joe Biden, although he needs no advice, is just be yourself. He is the man who is meeting this moment, somebody who has the experience, the wisdom, the leadership, the vision, and the character that Americans are looking for right now. That came through in the first debate, and as long as it comes through in the second debate, he's going to be great.
Great. And I know that we have a lot of questions here. We're running a little bit out of time here, so we're going to go with only a few more. Next one is from Mario Portillo of Forte News in Laredo. This is for both Congressman O'Rourke and Secretary Castro. Are you guys concerned at all about the support Trump is having at the border? And what would you say to the border and Rio Grande Valley to get the people out to vote? Secretary, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd say, look, what we've seen in communities like the Rio Grande Valley and Laredo is how hard hit they have been by this coronavirus pandemic. They've had higher death rates, hospitalization rates, infection rates because of the underinvestment in those parts of the state at the hands of Republicans. And Donald Trump's incompetence with this coronavirus has cost the Rio Grande Valley and many people in Laredo so dearly, including the loss of relatives. It's also true that the Rio Grande Valley, Laredo, our border communities, they have a front row seat to Donald Trump's cruelty when it comes to immigration. And they understand that we can do a lot better than that, that we can make sure that everybody in this country is able to prosper, that everybody is able to reach for their dreams. And I'm convinced that border communities want a president who is going to be a president for everybody, not just some people, all Americans, not just some Americans.
Thank you. And Congressman?
I would agree with what the Secretary said and further emphasize that in Starr County, in Cameron County, in Hidalgo County, you all have been hit harder than almost any other part of Texas by COVID. And it was not an act of God, and it was not by accident. It was due to the ineptitude and downright cruelty of Donald Trump and those who follow in his footsteps, like Governor Greg Abbott here in Texas, who prevented the county judges there, by the way, from being able initially to mandate masks, from being able to mandate stay-at-home orders, when their constituents were dying so quickly that they ran out of room in the funeral homes, in the morgues, and they were forced to stack dead bodies in refrigerated FEMA trailers in those counties. And as Julián said, these are the people who bore witness to the cruelty of this administration, to tearing babies away from their mothers, more than 540 of whom we cannot connect back with their parents again, kids kept in cages, children whose lives we lost when they were in our custody and care, half a dozen in 1 year alone. If we do not, as Democrats, frankly, just as human beings and Americans, understand the culpability and responsibility and the need for accountability that all comes down to replacing Donald Trump, who is responsible for this, with Joe Biden, who would do so much better on every single count, then ultimately we too are complicit in this. So I join the Secretary in urging the communities of the border, and here I am in El Paso, Texas, which is leading the country in the rate of COVID infection for cities over 400,000. This is due to Donald Trump and to Greg Abbott and their failure in leadership. If we in El Paso and in the Rio Grande Valley and in Webb County, and Secretary mentioned Laredo, if we don't step up and stand up to this, then we are in part to blame. So this is on all of us to get right. The good news is, again, we do see people voting in higher numbers than they did before, but we've got to keep it up. There's 12 days left in which we can vote, which we must vote, which we must turn out our friends, family, neighbors, classmates, colleagues, and the complete strangers that we run into on the street or on social media. This one is on us. There is no cavalry coming to save us. The Biden campaign may or may not invest more in Texas. This one has to be won by Texans. The good news is Texas has shown us thus far that we are taking this seriously and turning out record numbers. Let's keep it going.
Great. And next question is for Judge Hidalgo. It says, so it seems that Texas Republicans are very afraid. John Cornyn tried to distance himself from Trump a few weeks ago, and it's and Texas is obviously one of the very few states that haven't expanded mail-in voting. We read your letter today, and it seems like there might be an issue with the drive-through voting. Why do you think Texas Republicans are so afraid? And do you think it's a harbinger of what's to come on November 3rd?
we made these voting investments to make voting accessible. And one of the avenues is drive-through voting. It has been incredibly popular, and it is perfectly legal. We ran it by the Secretary of State. We got it started, and now we are seeing silence from the Secretary of State, a lawsuit from the Texas Republican Party, comments from a letter from the Attorney General, and comments from leading Republicans suggesting that they may be working to invalidate those votes. To me, it's just crazy that it's even conceivable that they would do that. But we're all having this discussion because they've taken these unprecedented steps to suppress the vote, from the attempts at voter roll purges to shutting down 11 of our 12 Dropbox sites once the voting had already started, to the attacks they're mounting on this now. And so they're clearly terrified of the results if people participate. We know what it looks like when folks are scared. They'll do anything. This is it. And so that's why, we're watching very closely. I've asked the governor for assurances that those votes are going to be counted. I'm hoping that we'll get a response soon. I'm very, very concerned at what I'm seeing. And so I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. And we're looking at all avenues. My commitment is to make sure everybody can vote, no matter who they're voting for. All of these expansions we've done all throughout the county. But the attacks are just profoundly sad, and they're also profoundly concerning in terms of our democratic values.
Thank you, Judge. Does anyone else want to take that as well?
Avi, I'll just say one quick thing that I want all the reporters to know. This wasn't some wild idea by Harris County. This was something blessed by the Governor Abbott appointed Secretary of State of the state of Texas, who has purview over these elections. So they said, let's do this. And to Judge Hidalgo's point, all she is doing is making sure that in the midst of the deadliest pandemic that has already claimed the lives of 17,000 of our fellow Texans, that people can securely and safely be able to cast their ballot. And so she should be commended, not attacked as she's being attacked right now by our Attorney General and our governor.
Thank you very much. And the last question from Suzanne Gamboa of NBC News. It's for all three of you. She says, do you all plan on campaigning until Election Day? And do you think that we will see Joe Biden, the candidate himself, campaign in Texas before Election Day? So, Congressman, let's start with you.
Julián Castro and I, a week ago, Monday, so the day before early voting began, joined with thousands of our fellow Texans and Americans and made more than 2.9 million phone calls to Texas voters to get them to make a plan to vote. Subsequent to that, we've been on the phones every day, calling 200, 300, 400,000 Texas voters an evening, all with volunteers who are giving up their time and doing one of the most challenging things to do, to call a complete stranger and to talk to them about voting and being involved in this election. So we're going to keep that up. We are sprinting through the tape, all of us, and look at what the Texas Democratic Party is doing. Look at what the Biden campaign's team, the state team here in Texas, is doing with very few resources and reaching so many voters. And then look at what these individual candidates are doing, whether it's Sima Lajavardian in Houston, whether it's Candace Valenzuela up in North Texas running for Congress, whether it's Natalie Hurtado, Akila Basie, Elisa Simmons, all running for the state house. This is the most diverse, the most powerful slate of candidates I've ever seen in Texas history. And it makes me so proud. They're putting themselves out there in a really difficult election year. We owe it to them to do our part, to be with them every single step of the way. And so, yes, we're going to campaign right through 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time in El Paso, Texas, the last county to report its results. And we could not be in better company. And I want to thank, Abby and the Texas Democratic Party, Secretary Castro, who's just been so amazing on all of these issues and with our voters in Texas, and Judge Hidalgo, who represents the very powerfully positive contrast to the failed leadership of Governor Greg Abbott. We are so proud and grateful for her service. And thank you all for allowing me to join the press conference today.
Yeah, that's music to our ears, Congressman. Secretary Castro.
Yeah, and thank you again, Beto, for you and everybody with Powered by People for the great work that y'all have been doing. And thank you for the invitation to be a part of calling folks, but I know y'all have been doing a lot of that. And to Judge Hidalgo for all of her efforts. Again, last week I traveled to Arizona to campaign for Vice President Biden and Senator Harris. This weekend, I'm going to be in Colorado and in Nevada. I also anticipate traveling here in Texas, with the Texas Democratic Party, as I'm sure all of us will between now and Election Day. I look forward to getting out to some of these cities in Texas, virtually and or in person, to encourage people to vote. I'd like to get out to the Valley and to the I-35 corridor, and am open between now and Election Day to do more work as well, to get folks out here in Texas, because it is going to be a very close election.
Thank you, Secretary Castro. We will definitely take you up on that one. Judge Hidalgo.
Well, I echo what's been said. We're down to the wire. The energy is there. The right candidate is there. And so it is time to get this home. So I'm absolutely committed to making sure that we get Vice President Biden and Senator Harris through the finish line. And of course, we would welcome them here in Harris County. We had Dr. Biden and she was fantastic. She got incredible reception. And now we just need those added resources. We need the candidates. But either way, we're going to keep pushing. We're all in.
Thank you very much, Judge. That's it for our press conference today. I know that there are several other questions. If you want to ask the questions to the speakers, please email me at abhi@txdemocrats.org. Again, that's abhi@txdemocrats.org, and I'll connect you with the teams of each of the speakers. Besides that, thank you all for joining us. We are now going to do a Spanish press conference starting at 4:00 p.m., kind of the same format as this one. For all of our speakers on this one, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.